Welcome to the HFY Tales channel. Remember to like and subscribe if you like the story. Enjoy and take care.
Did you know that in 12 documented cases of human abduction by the Zolician royal family, I'm the only one who ever made it back to tell the tale? The others either died trying to escape or, well, they're probably still wearing those ridiculous ceremonial spouse robes. My name is Lieutenant James Harker, and for 147 Earth days, I was forced to play the role of besotted fiancé to Princess Kla Vex of the 7th Quadrant. This is the story of how I turned a royal wedding into the greatest prison break in human history. They didn't just grab any human. They wanted a warrior with specific genetic markers. During my debriefing, the officer kept circling one question: why me? The answer was buried in the princess's private research logs. She wasn't looking for a husband. She was collecting a specimen. The night they took me, I was 3 days into a solo recon mission near the Vega 9 outpost. Standard planetary scan. Nothing unusual, until the atmosphere turned electric. My suit's sensor spiked, then died. By the time I saw the royal barge descending, it was too late. 12 Zolician guards hit me with neural suppressants before I could draw my sidearm. When I woke up, I was strapped to a scanning table in what looked like a cross between a medical bay and a jewel box. Biometric lasers mapped everything from my muscle density to my adrenaline response patterns. Later, I'd learned this was their version of a dating ritual. The princess watched from an elevated platform, tapping her claws against a data slate. Turns out my military records flagged me in their system. The Royal Selection Protocol prioritized humans with confirmed combat experience, specific stress response profiles, and here's the kicker: a certain blood enzyme level tied to pain tolerance. I wasn't a person to them. I was a walking trophy case of evolutionary advantages. What they didn't tell me at first was that 3 other guys had already failed the screening process. One panicked during the neural scans and got recycled into their protein synthesizers. Another couldn't produce the correct pheromone responses during courtship trials. The third actually volunteered until he saw the princess's feeding habits up close. For the first 2 weeks, they kept me in a training suite disguised as luxury quarters. Every morning, attendants would run me through these bizarre compatibility tests. One involved holding my hand in a tank of molten alloy to prove my pain threshold. Human skin burns at 1,200 degrees, but Zolaxians regenerate at that temperature. Another test required memorizing their royal lineage, while electrical pulses disrupted my short-term memory. The princess herself oversaw the final approval. She had this way of tilting her head when analyzing my stress responses, like a kid poking at a captured insect. They'd already tailored my ceremonial armor, designed my wedding crest, even pre-written my vows, all before confirming I could survive their bonding rituals. What changed things was stumbling onto the specimen logs during a tour of the royal gardens. The attendants called it an educational exhibit. I saw storage pods with human DNA samples labeled matriarchal lineage optimization. My pod was already prepared, right next to the other 3 failures. That's when I realized the wedding was just an elaborate harvesting ceremony. The debriefing officer asked if I felt fear when I figured it out. No, you don't get scared when the math gets this simple. Survive or become a lab specimen. Escape or spend eternity as somebody's gene donor. The actual nightmare began the moment I stopped seeing myself as a guest and started thinking like a prisoner of war. But being chosen was just the beginning of the nightmare. My quarters had every luxury, except for doors that opened from the inside. That's the thing people never understand about being a privileged prisoner. The bed adjusts to your body temperature. The walls display landscapes from your home planet. The food replicator knows your childhood recipes. But none of that changes the fact that you can't leave. Not without permission. The first time I tried testing boundaries, I learned about the Minders. Zolician attendants trained to monitor emotional states. They didn't just watch me. They could literally smell shifts in my brain chemistry. One flick of their antennae, and they'd know if I was planning something. That's when I dug up an old survival trick from basic training, the memory palace technique. I'd visualize a secure room in my mind, then lock every escape plan inside it behind layers of random thoughts. Their mistake was assuming human thoughts work like theirs. Zolaxians process everything linearly, like data streams. Our brains multitask. So while part of me recited love poems during our mandatory bonding sessions, another part was counting guard rotations. I'd focus on the princess's facial ridges. 3 vertical grooves meant irritation, 5 meant curiosity, and let that dominate my surface thoughts. The Menders saw discipline and misinterpreted it as devotion. The real breakthrough came when I realized their tech couldn't distinguish real emotions from faked ones. So I started feeding them false signals. During intimate dinners, I'd recall the stench of burning flesh from a training accident to trigger stress hormones. When they let me stroll in the crystal gardens, I'd summon memories of my niece's birthday to produce oxytocin spikes. The Menders dutifully logged it all as growing attachment. Princess Kla Vex especially loved when I accidentally let slip violent impulses. Their culture romanticizes predator behavior, so I'd vividly imagine breaking a guard's neck during sparring sessions, knowing the Menders would detect the aggression and report it as passion. The princess would later compliment me on my ferocity, completely missing that I'd been measuring her bodyguard's reaction times. There were close calls. Once, a younger minder caught me mentally rehearsing door lock sequences during a massage. I felt her claws tense against my temples, so I instantly flooded my brain with the grossest memory I had, a field surgery gone wrong, knowing the disgust would overwhelm everything else. She recoiled, blamed a faulty scent receptor, and switched shifts. The attendants weren't the only surveillance. Every surface in my quarters had subdermal pressure sensors. Even shifting my weight wrong could trigger an alert. I trained myself to move like a Zolician noble, deliberate, fluid motions, while using those same movements to test structural weaknesses. That ornamental fountain, its pipes ran straight to the sanitation ducts. The crystal dining table, its legs were hollow enough to conceal stolen tools. What kept me sane was the routine. Up at dawn for another round of courtship rituals. Let them scan me, test me, parade me around the royal court, smile when the princess demonstrated how easily her claws could puncture human skin, nod when her advisors debated which of my organs were most worth preserving, then spend nights silently cataloging every vulnerability in their perfect golden prison. The only personal item they let me keep was a holocube of my family. Big mistake. I'd spend hours staring at it, not because I missed them, though I did, but because reflecting light off its edges revealed hidden surveillance blind spots. The attendants thought it was touching. Really, I was mapping the room's security grid. After 6 weeks, the princess summoned me for our first private dinner. No Menders, no guards, just the 2 of us under those floating bioluminescent lamps they love so much. She reached across the table, traced my jugular with one claw, and whispered how honored I should feel. Her chambers were soundproof, she explained. No one would hear me scream. That's when I knew the wedding date had been moved up. Faking affection bought me time, but I needed tools. You'd be surprised what you can weaponize from alien cosmetics. During my debriefing, the officer kept staring at my makeshift gear like it was black magic. A hairpin repurposed as a lockpick. Fabric strands braided into climbing cord. Even the decorative gems from my ceremonial sash could be ground into glass shards. The Zolaxians scanned for energy signatures and explosives. They never considered a human might use their own jewelry against them. The first tool came from my grooming kit. Their equivalent of nail polish contained a solvent that dissolved the adhesives on door seals. I pretend to fix my appearance while actually coating my fingertips with the stuff. One press against a guard's tablet during inspection, and the screen would deactivate long enough to glimpse security protocols. The attendants just thought I was vain. Banquets became my armory. Those shimmering sauce gels, the acidic ones could etch weak points into structural joints if applied repeatedly. I'd spill some on my sleeve at every meal, then accidentally brush against support beams on my way out. After 3 weeks, certain load-bearing surfaces developed hairline fractures no scanner could detect. My biggest score came from the princess herself. She gifted me a vibroblade pendant, their version of an engagement ring. The ceremonial weapon could sever molecular bonds with ultrasonic vibrations. She thought it romantic when I wore it constantly. What she didn't see was me testing its frequency settings against door hinges during private moments. The Zolaxians made three critical mistakes. First, they assumed primitive meant harmless. Their scanners ignored anything without power cells, so I hid tools in plain sight. A dinner fork's tines became lock probes when snapped at the right angle. Second, they never considered I'd study their infrastructure. Those decorative wall vines? The irrigation lines behind them fed the entire sector's water supply. Third, they gave me time. 72 days to catalog every vulnerability. I kept inventory in the only place they wouldn't look, my own body. Tiny scars marked locations of interest. Left forearm for guard rotation patterns. Right thigh for ventilation shaft layouts. The menders noticed the wounds, but bought my story about accidentally scratching myself during sleep. Security got sloppy around maintenance drones. The cleaning bots ignored organic matter, so I'd spit chewed food into their path to make them slip. After the third bot crashed into a security terminal, the guards stopped relying on them for hallway sweeps. That gave me 9 minutes of blind coverage every 6 hours when the humanoid attendants took over. The real prize came from the Royal Spa. Their skin rejuvenators used focused ultrasound to break down scar tissue. Same technology as their medical stunners. I sabotaged one unit during a mandatory grooming session, causing it to discharge into a maintenance panel. The resulting power surge disabled the entire wing surveillance for exactly 43 minutes. Long enough to confirm my theories about the service tunnels. Everything hinged on timing. Their patrol patterns changed with the palace's artificial tides, some gravitational cleaning system. I memorized the 12-minute windows when certain corridors emptied completely. The guards assumed no one could exploit such brief gaps. They'd never met a human who spent months practicing quick-entry drills. Princess Kla Vex helped without realizing it. Her jealousy kept other Zolaxians from searching me too thoroughly. She'd punish any attendant who manhandled her property. This meant no one discovered the hollowed-out heel of my left boot, where I stored stolen ration paste, or the modified shard of dining crystal sewn into my sash lining. The attendants did catch me once, with a makeshift compass from broken glass and magnetized servingware. I sold it as romantic human tradition, claiming we always carry tokens pointing toward our beloved's heart. The menders ate it up. Their reports probably called it charmingly primitive. What finally convinced me to act wasn't the weapons or the blueprints. It was the food preservatives. The royal chefs used a metallic compound to keep banquet dishes fresh. The same compound, when mixed with certain human bodily fluids, created a slow-acting corrosive. After 3 weeks of discrete saliva samples stored in emptied perfume vials, I had enough to eat through a door's emergency release. The hardest part wasn't escaping. It was waiting for the perfect moment. Every love poem I recited was actually a countdown to rebellion. During debriefing, the officers asked why I bothered memorizing all those Zolician verses. They didn't understand. The poetry wasn't courtship. It was reconnaissance. Each rhyme mapped to a security system. Every stanza had guard rotation patterns. The princess started noticing my sudden devotion. She'd tilt her head during our dates, those vertical facial ridges twitching with suspicion. So I cranked up the performance. Let my hand shake when holding hers. Stammered through compliments. Leaned too close during holographic displays until my elbow, accidentally, disabled the perimeter alarms. The menders logged it all as endearing human clumsiness. Our dance rehearsals became tactical exercises. Zolician wedding traditions required exact movements, 5 steps clockwise, 3 backwards, a synchronized turn. Perfect for memorizing patrol routes. I'd count the guards' footsteps while pretending to focus on my own. Their clawed feet clicked against crystal floors at precise intervals. Once you knew the rhythm, you could predict their positions blindfolded. There's a reason humans are terrible at Zolician poker. Our pupils dilate when lying. Theirs constrict. So when I told the princess, she looked radiant as her attendants grafted ceremonial jewels into her exoskeleton. My body betrayed nothing. She mistook my racing pulse for excitement. In reality, I was timing how long it took her guards to react when I abruptly left my designated spot. The real test came during the Feast of Twin Moons. Important royal tradition. Also the one night all high-ranking officials gathered in the throne room. I staged our first public argument near the main security terminal. made a show of slamming down my goblet, right as my other hand slipped a copper fork tine into the console's access slot. The resulting power fluctuation got blamed on human emotional volatility. What sold the act was letting her win. After 30 minutes of me storming around, I returned with a dramatic apology written in my own blood. The princess ate it up. So did the Menders. Their reports gushed about breakthrough emotional bonding. None noticed I'd used a distraction to confirm 3 critical details. The throne room's emergency exits lacked biometric scans. The serving drones could be jammed with ultrasonic pulses. And the princess's personal guards carried shock batons instead of kill weapons. Her advisors saw red flags. During our next romantic stargazing session on the observation deck, 2 attendants positioned themselves between me and the princess. So I started reciting their own sacred texts backward, word by word, watching their antennae twitch in discomfort. When the princess asked what I was doing, I claimed it was an ancient human love ritual. Her ensuing laughter got me alone with the western balconies railing for 17 uninterrupted minutes. Dance rehearsals intensified as the wedding approached. The royal choreographer drilled us on the grand procession, a 15-minute sequence ending with me kneeling before the imperial throne. Great ceremonial moment, terrible tactical position. I struggled with the moves, requiring extra practice sessions. Each repetition let me study the hall's acoustics. How sound carried from the mineral arches, where the guards' footfalls echoed loudest. The Menders eventually caught on. Not to my real plan. They thought I was developing performance anxiety. Their solution? More bonding exercises. The princess and I were locked in the Chamber of Whispers for 6 hours, supposedly to share secrets. What they didn't know was human ears can detect subsonic vibrations in certain Zolician building materials. Every time the ventilation system cycled, I heard the distant hum of the security hub's backup generators. 6 days before the wedding, I gave them precisely what they wanted, a breakthrough moment. During sunset meditation, I spontaneously composed terrible poetry about the princess's ocular ridges. Let my voice crack. Fake tears when she praised my effort. The attendants practically tripped over themselves documenting this emotional milestone. Meanwhile, I counted the seconds between courtyard guard changes as they hurried off to update their reports. The final piece fell into place during dress fittings. My wedding cape contained nanofibers strong enough to suspend a full-grown Zolician. The tailors kept bragging about its indestructibility while adjusting the clasps. They never considered someone might use it as a grappling line. Neither did the princess when she personally ensured I could remove it with one romantic flourish during our first dance. Why me? Because I was the first specimen who played along long enough to learn their tells. The other 11 guys either resisted openly or broke under conditioning. I let them think they'd won. Every love letter contained coded observations. Each stolen kiss tested security response times. When they scanned my brainwaves during bonding sessions, they saw only what I wanted them to see: a human falling obediently in love. Their coronation archives will show beautiful footage of Lieutenant James Harker, the perfect docile groom. What they edited out was me whispering coordinates against a princess's earring during our final dance practice, or how my trembling hands during vows rehearsal weren't nerves, they were. Measuring the exact torque needed to snap a ceremonial goblet's stem into a shiv. Then came the wedding rehearsal and my final performance. Nobody expects the groom to steal his own wedding cake. The debriefing officer kept circling that line in the incident reports, apparently. Zolician security protocols had 0 procedures for culinary theft, which was ironic because their banquet cake turned out to be the MVP of my escape. It started during a tasting session 3 days before the wedding. The royal pastry chef insisted I sample every layer. That's when I noticed something odd. The bioluminescent icing made my lips tingle. At first I thought it was just alien food being weird. Then I saw the chef use a special tool to cut the cake. The metallic frosting knife corroded on contact with the icing. Turns out, the cake's preservative compound contained a chemical that reacted with Zolician alloys. Harmless to organics, deadly to their infrastructure. The chefs knew this. They always used ceramic utensils, but nobody considered a human might weaponize dessert. So I did what any prisoner would. I volunteered for extra baking lessons. Smuggling icing out required some creativity. The attendants searched me after every kitchen visit, but they ignored my ceremonial sash. Traditional Zolician wedding garb has these ornate fabric folds that trap particles. I modified the inner layers to hold thin vials stolen from the floral department. Each visit, I palm another gram of frosting while pretending to adjust my attire. I needed a distribution method. That's where the champagne came in. Wedding tradition demanded the groom make a toast with sparkling wine from his homeworld. They'd imported actual earth champagne for the occasion. The bottle's cork had just enough give to conceal a syringe filled with icing concentrate. Every time I poured a glass, I could dose someone's drink. The princess made easy. She loved watching me perform human rituals. When I offered to mix our ancestral wines, her metallic Zolician vintage with my champagne, she practically purred. What she didn't notice was me tilting the glasses just so, ensuring her drink got the spiked ice shard I'd smuggled in under my thumbnail. The reaction was faster than I expected. Within 3 minutes, her tertiary stomach began convulsing. The attendants swarmed, scanners flashing. I played shock fiancé perfectly, even catching her as she collapsed, mostly to verify her security pendant had deactivated during the medical emergency. Chaos creates opportunities. With the princess whisked to the infirmary and half the guards following, I suddenly had access to previously restricted areas. The cake staff were too busy being interrogated to notice me comfort eating near sensitive equipment. One carefully dropped glob of icing later, the security hub's backup generators started smoking. Here's what the reports won't tell you. The wedding cake was just the delivery system. The real genius was the timing. Zolician medical protocols dictated complete isolation during stomach purges, meaning no witnesses when I raided the princess's private chambers. Her jewelry box yielded 3 vital items: a master key shaped like a hair ornament, a data crystal with palace blueprints, and surprisingly, a handwritten note about my ideal genetic compatibility. The Menders assumed grief when they found me kneeling by the princess's empty sleeping pod. Really, I was testing how quickly the key could open its emergency release hatch. Their scans showed elevated cortisol. They interpreted it as concern rather than the adrenaline rush of a man who'd just found his exit route. What made the cake gambit work wasn't just chemistry. It was understanding their blind spots. Zolaxians see food as either sustenance or art. The concept of turning dessert into a diversion never occurred to them. By the time the chefs realized 6 pounds of icing were missing, I'd already used it to disable 3 doors, jam 2 elevators, and short-circuit the guard's comms array during shift change. The final test came when the head chef confronted me. He'd noticed discrepancies in his inventory logs. I tearfully confessed to stress-eating cake in the gardens, even showed him icing smeared on my sleeve. He patted my shoulder and ordered a second dessert tier, completely missing that the stressed smudges on my clothes were actually carefully placed corrosion points near security cam wiring. Underestimating human sweet teeth nearly cost them a princess. The medics later found traces of 18 different icing-based compounds in her system. My personal favorite? The glowing blue variety that just so happened to neutralize stun baton charges when aerosolized near their power cores. With the princess hospitalized, Phase 2 began. Our first dance would be her last chance to catch me. Looking back now, the whole thing plays out like some messed-up ballet. Every step, every turn had been rehearsed for weeks, but not the way they thought. That choreography gave me something nobody realized: a perfect exit strategy built into royal tradition. The princess still looked pale from the cake incident when they dragged me to the ballroom. Her attendants kept scanning my vitals, whispering about my elevated pulse. What they didn't understand was that my heart wasn't racing from nerves. It was timing. Every thump counted down to the moment I'd make my move. My boots held the first secret. The thruster pads I'd stolen from maintenance drones fit perfectly in the hollowed-out heels. They weren't strong enough for real flight, but they could give me one good boost at the right moment. Getting them had required 6 weeks of accidentally bumping into repair techs near the docking bay. Zolician wedding dances follow strict patterns. 14 steps toward the throne, 3 spins, then a final bow, all designed to show off the groom's obedience. I'd memorized every pivot point. That third spin put me directly under the ventilation shaft. The bow positioned me to slam my modified heel into the floor trigger plate. Everything hinged on tradition. Royal protocol demanded the groom lead, meaning the princess had to follow my steps. When I staggered slightly during the fifth measure, she instinctively mirrored my motion. The attendants saw clumsiness. What they missed was me testing weight distribution on the unstable floor panel I'd pre-weakened with cake acids. The cape nearly ruined everything. Nanofiber mesh doesn't rustle like normal fabric. I had to practice for hours to make sure it wouldn't tangle during the launch. Last-minute modifications with stolen cutting tools gave me quick release points at the shoulders, but only if pulled at a precise angle. At the debriefing, they asked why I didn't run sooner. The answer was in the security logs. The dance floor was the only place where all palace defenses temporarily deactivated. Something about interference from ceremonial energy fields. For exactly 3 minutes and 17 seconds, the anti-grav restraints in my collar went dormant. I still remember the exact moment I committed. The music swelled during the final approach, the princess reaching for my ceremonial veil. That's when I stomped my left heel hard enough to activate the thrusters and tripped directly upward. The attendants later described it as a freak accident. Groom loses footing, crashes into ceiling. They left out how my outstretched hands caught the ventilation grate I'd loosened days earlier. The cape saved me. As I yanked myself into the shaft, the attendants finally reacted. One grabbed the flowing fabric, not realizing it was designed to hold 10 times my weight. The quick release seams parted exactly as planned, leaving them clutching empty cloth while I disappeared upward. What followed was the quietest 5 minutes of my life, wedged in that metal tunnel, counting the seconds until the inevitable alarm. That's when the princess finally showed her real voice. Not the cultured tones she used in court, but something primal, a biosonic scream that cracked the crystal chandeliers. The security footage shows her guards clutching their antennae in pain as the frequency overloaded their senses. Her fury worked in my favor. With the entire palace rushing toward that sonic outburst, nobody noticed the ventilation shaft's access panel swinging shut. The princess ordered drones to flush the system, not realizing I had already used my remaining cake icing to jam their propulsion units. The cape's nanofibers became my lifeline. Woven around a broken ceiling strut, they lowered me down a service elevator shaft faster than any lift. Zolician architecture has this quirk. Emergency shafts are lined with soundproofing that also blocks thermal scans. By the time guards checked level 12, I was already on 34. They never expected me to go down. The princess assumed I'd head for the Royal Docking Bay, where every ship had biometric locks. Instead, I followed the dessert cart routes. Those tunnels led straight to the garbage compactors, which in turn fed into the exterior disposal chutes. Her final scream still shows up in my nightmares sometimes. Not because it was terrifying, because it confirmed something critical. Even at full volume, the sound couldn't penetrate the maintenance tunnels. That's how I knew the palace had acoustic weak spots no architect had accounted for. What happened next proved why humans terrify them. I let her track me, right into the deadliest part of the palace. The debriefing officer kept asking why I didn't bother masking my scent. Simple answer: I needed the princess to follow me. She could detect human pheromones from 3 sectors away, thanks to those delicate antennae. What she couldn't handle was reactor radiation, and I'd spent weeks memorizing which corridors ran near the palace's power core. My route took me straight past the auxiliary shielding units. Those massive octagonal plates emitted enough gamma radiation to sterilize a city block. Harmless to humans in short bursts, lethal to Zolaxians. I made sure to brush against every contaminated surface as I ran. The princess's tracking pheromones stuck to my clothes like glitter, broadcasting my path to her guards, right into the one area their biology couldn't tolerate. Zolician radiation sickness starts with disorientation. I saw it happening in real time through the security cameras I'd hacked using a stolen maintenance tablet. The princess staggered first, her 4th set of eyelids fluttering involuntarily. Her attendants collapsed soon after, their chitinous exoskeletons conducting the radiation like antennas. Human skin? Just another Tuesday near an X-ray machine. Their medical tech confirmed my theory. During a routine checkup months earlier, I'd snooped through the palace physician's database. Zolician blood uses copper instead of iron. Great for oxygen transport. Terrible for radiation shielding. 5 minutes near those reactor conduits would hospitalize them for weeks. I only needed 90 seconds to reach the service ladder. The princess made it further than I expected. She actually cleared the radiation zone before her legs gave out. Security footage showed her clawing at the walls, whispering something about perfect genetic stock between convulsions. That's when I realized the truth. She wasn't chasing a fugitive. She was trying to salvage property. Here's what the radiation gambit proved. Their security protocols had blind spots you could fly a dreadnought through. The reactor access tunnels had no guards because no Zolician could survive there long enough to patrol them. Their motion sensors ignored small heat signatures to avoid constant alerts from maintenance drones. And their emergency lighting created enough electromagnetic interference to mask the signals from my stolen tech. I almost felt bad when the princess's biosuit malfunctioned. Almost. She'd jury-rigged some emergency containment gear to keep chasing me, but the visor fogged up almost immediately. Later reports confirmed she'd wandered straight into a coolant spill, thinking it was a shortcut. The resulting chemical burns put her in a regeneration tank for 3 Earth weeks. The cleanup crew found something interesting afterward, my wedding ring, deliberately left on a pipe near the reactor. Not out of sentiment. That ring contained enough radioactive particles to spoof their pheromone scanners for hours. While they scoured the contaminated zones, I was 3 levels up sabotaging the hangar defenses. What the debriefing team found most shocking wasn't the radiation play. It was the water tanks. Turns out hydrogen-rich environments scramble Zolician tracking abilities. I'd spent weeks prior marking every emergency shower station and aquarium along potential escape routes. Splashing through those during the chase created false pheromone trails in 19 different directions. Security assumed the palace's reactor sector was its own containment system. No need for guards when physics does the job for you. They never accounted for a species that evolved under heavier stellar radiation than their homeworld. Human bone marrow repairs radiation damage 3 times faster than Zolician tissue. Our astronauts trained for months in environments that would kill their civilians instantly. The princess's medical reports told the real story. Her team retrieved pages from my discarded journal, thinking it might reveal my plans. What they actually got was fake notes about escape routes near the gardens, written in ink that reacted with their scanners to produce false radiation readings. Half her security force spent critical hours sweeping sterile areas while I prepped my exit. Only later did we learn why she pushed through the radiation sickness. Her researchers had identified me as a prime genetic source after analyzing my stress responses during torture simulations. Losing me meant restarting their hybrid program from scratch. That bioscream wasn't rage. It was a failed last-ditch effort to trigger my implanted neural restraints. The hangar was in sight, but so was my greatest mistake. She wasn't crying. She was activating her secondary vocal cords. That's the moment I realized everything about this marriage was a lie. The debriefing tapes don't capture how her face split open vertically when she screamed. Not a human sound, something deeper, vibrating at a frequency that shattered the crystal viewports around us. Later, the docs told me that particular pitch was calibrated to paralyze human nervous systems. I barely got my helmet sealed in time. The makeshift headgear was cobbled together from stolen maintenance gear and part of a food processor, but it had one critical feature: an emergency seal I'd modified using the princess's own jewelry clasps. The sonic wave hit like a truck, knocking me sideways, even through the dampeners. What saved me was pure luck, my old cochlear implant from an IED blast back on Earth. The military-grade hardware filtered out the exact frequency range her scream used. Security footage recovered after the escape told the real story. While I'd been memorizing wedding vows, the princess had been preparing restraints in her private chambers. Not the decorative silk cords they showed me. Industrial-grade neural clamps designed to interface directly with the human spine. Her attendants referred to them as harvesting braces in the logs. The first sonic burst was just her opening move. As I scrambled toward the hangar, she emitted a second pulse that liquefied the servos in nearby drones. Their molten metal splashed across the corridor like shrapnel. One droplet burned through my thigh, but the pain barely registered. I was too focused on the escape pod schematics I'd memorized during dinner banquets. Here's what changed everything. The princess didn't need me alive, just intact enough for DNA harvesting. Their medical tech could clone viable samples from corpses. That's why she escalated to lethal frequencies so fast. The romantic dates, the gifts, even the cake poisoning. None of it mattered if she could salvage my genetic material from a corpse. I turned her own biology against her. Zolaxians can't sustain those sonic attacks for long. The vibrations damaged their internal organs too. Each scream cost her minutes of regeneration time. When I ducked behind a structural support beam, she hesitated, not out of mercy, but because she needed to recalibrate her vocal sacs. The hangar doors were 7 paces away when she caught me. Her claws punched straight through the stolen chest plate I'd fashioned from banquet trays. What she didn't expect was the ceramic shard I'd strapped to my sternum, same material as their cake knives. When she lunged, her claws skidded off the surface long enough for me to jam a vibro blade into her secondary vocal slit. The resulting feedback screech knocked us both unconscious. Later analysis showed the blade disrupted her bioacoustics at the molecular level. For 3 critical minutes, she couldn't scream, couldn't signal for help, just long enough for me to reach the nearest escape pod. Here's the detail that haunts me. After they pulled my helmet footage, the tech spotted something in the background of our fight, a wall display showing 11 other human biosigns in stasis pods, all marked with the same classification: genetic donor, optimal traits. My pod was already prepped and labeled when I got there. The princess recovered faster than expected. As the pod's thrusters fired, she came barreling down the corridor in a medical exosuit, her face still losing blue ichor from the vibroblade wound. She managed to grab the pod's external comm array, screaming something about irreplaceable genetic lines, until the automated launch sequence pried her loose. What the debriefing revealed later was worse. The wedding ceremony itself was designed to trigger a neural rewrite in the groom, some kind of pheromone-based conditioning hidden in the ceremonial incense. Every loving look, every romantic gesture I'd faked, she'd been running the same psychological operations on me. The docs found traces of 17 different psychoactive compounds in my bloodstream. Only one thing saved me from full reprogramming: human adaptability. Our brains physically restructure themselves under stress in ways Zolician science never accounted for. The very resilience they coveted in their breeding program is what let me override their conditioning. The explosion gave me cover. And her one final lesson: I didn't steal a ship, I jury-rigged their own wedding decorations. The debriefing officer kept staring at the security footage like his screens were broken. What they saw didn't compute. A human floating away in a ceremonial flower barge that wasn't space-worthy by any metric. But metrics don't account for desperation and 5 months of studying alien interior design. The barge was meant for atmospheric parades, not spaceflight. Its life support could barely sustain a Zolician for 2 hours, let alone a human. But I'd spent weeks noticing things, like how the hydrogen canisters powering the floral displays had the same nozzle thread as emergency thruster fuel tanks. The floating gardens weren't just decoration, they were untapped fuel depots. Here's what their engineers never considered. Zolician aesthetics follow strict geometric ratios. Every curve on that barge had been calculated for visual harmony, which by cosmic coincidence created perfect thrust, vectoring, when I rerouted the fuel lines. The floral arrays weren't just pretty. Their staggered arrangement prevented combustion instability better than most human-designed rocket nozzles. Modifying it took every second of the princess's medical timeout. I'd stockpiled tools in advance. The same jewelry clasps that held my wedding cape now secured fuel transfer tubes. The romantic vibroblade pendant cut through structural braces cleanly. Even the decorative chains became improvised throttle linkages when braided with strands of my own hair for tensile strength. Launch conditions weren't ideal. The barge lacked proper seals, so I had to repurpose half the cake displays as makeshift airlock buffers. Their transparent domes weren't rated for vacuum, but 6 layers of nanofiber tablecloth provided just enough insulation. Oxygen came from the floral canisters, Turns out their preservation gas was 90% breathable for humans, with minimal filtering. The princess's final scream became my unexpected booster. That bioacoustic blast hit the barge's underside as I cleared the docking bay. Instead of tearing me apart, the shockwave rattled the half-empty fuel canisters in just the right sequence to stabilize my spin. Physics doesn't care about intentions. Energy is energy, whether it comes from rage or rocket fuel. Navigation was the real test. No onboard computers, just a star chart I'd memorized during forced stargazing dates with the princess. Their ceremonial poetry actually helped. Each verse contained exact spatial coordinates of nearby colonies, disguised as romantic metaphors. 15 weeks of love sonnets had given me everything needed to plot an escape vector. Fuel consumption demanded constant adjustments. The barge wasn't built for sustained burns, so I had to pulse the thrusters in sync with the rotational cycles. That's where the wedding dance training paid off. Those agonizing hours of choreography had tuned my internal clock to Zolician timing standards. Every three-step turn in their waltz translated to a perfect 0.3-second thruster burst. Life support was dicey. The barge's environmental systems assumed passengers would be in hibernation stasis. Human biology disagreed. I rationed the oxygen canisters by taping frosting-filled vials to the intake vents. Turns out sugar crystals selectively filter CO2 at certain temperatures. Not perfect, but enough to keep my lungs working for 19 hours. Communication was impossible until I remembered the floral UV projectors. Their light shows were meant to dazzle crowds, but with the right frequency adjustments, they could transmit basic Morse code through the barge's transparent sections. I pulsed distress signals using the princess's stolen pendant as a modulator until my fingers bled. Zolician security nearly caught me 3 times. Their intercept drones kept scanning for engine signatures, while I floated dead silent on residual momentum. The barge's organic construction materials didn't register as artificial on their sensors. When one drone finally got close enough, I fired my last hydrogen canister like a harpoon, straight through its propulsion array. The worst moment wasn't mechanical, it was psychological. 12 hours in, the hibernation gas residues started affecting my thoughts. Hallucinations of the princess filled the barge, her voice whispering through the makeshift radio static. I fought it by scratching equations into the deck plating, focusing on orbital mechanics until my nails split. Rescue came from an unexpected direction. A Volpacura trade vessel picked up my UV signals. Turns out their cargo scanners were calibrated to detect illicit bioluminescent drugs. They found me semi-conscious, surrounded by wilted alien flowers and half a cake dome I'd been using as an oxygen buffer. The barge itself became a museum piece. Human engineers later estimated it had a 0.003% chance of reaching stable orbit. My math was simpler: escape or die trying. Every modification followed principles I'd learned in basic field repairs: maximize available resources, minimize unnecessary movements, and never underestimate decorative items. What really baffled the debriefing team was the leftover cake. Not that I'd taken it, but that I'd rationed portions throughout the voyage. The sugar kept me alert, the fat provided emergency calories, and the icing's chemical properties temporarily patched hull microfractures. Human stomachs are more versatile than Zolician scanners accounted for. The rescue fleet found me orbiting with half a wedding cake. That's when they told me about the other 11 grooms. The debriefing room fell dead silent as the intelligence officer slid a data slate across the table. 12 files appeared, mine at the bottom, still warm from recent updates. The other 11 were stamped with a single Zolician symbol meaning harvest complete. Military hackers had penetrated the palace servers during my escape chaos. What they found wasn't just abduction records, it was an industrial operation. Each groom had undergone the same selection process: combat history checks, genetic profiling, stress testing under simulated torture. Footage showed candidate number 4, a Martian Marine, being run through obstacle courses while neural monitors mapped his pain responses. They tagged him as too aggressive after he bit an attendant. The most chilling part wasn't the failures. It was how methodically they documented successes. Candidate number 9, some poor corporal from the Jupiter outposts, lasted 302 days before his attempted escape. Security feeds showed him reaching an actual ship, only to trigger a failsafe that flooded the cockpit with neural suppressants. His file contained 17 tissue samples and notes on optimal cryopreservation techniques. Zolician science moves fast. By groom number 6, they'd perfected gene extraction from living subjects. The videos made me sick. How they'd sedate them during romantic dinners. Take core samples from bone marrow while playing soothing music. The princess wasn't some rogue operator. She worked with royal geneticists following protocols older than human civilization. My own file made my hands shake. 23 tabs of biological data, muscle fiber density, neural activity under stress, even how my pupils dilated during sleep. The classification stamp blazed red. Prime source, clone viability 94%. They'd already begun culturing hybrid embryos using my DNA before I escaped. The lieutenant commander dropped the real bomb last. Intercepted communications showed the princess had placed an order 2 days before the wedding. 200 more human males with specific genetic markers. Not just soldiers this time. Engineers, scientists, even a few musicians, presumably for artistic trait preservation. Here's what unraveled their whole operation. The Zolician Empire has strict laws about cloning sentient species, unless those clones are classified as livestock. My escape triggered a system alert in their agricultural ministry. Turns out they'd registered all 12 of us under Genetic Livestock Acquisition Protocol 7. That veterinary barcode on my containment bracelet wasn't decoration. The princess's research notes revealed the endgame. She wasn't breeding soldiers or workers. Her team had identified human adaptability as the missing piece in some failed terraforming project. They needed beings who could survive unstable ecosystems while following orders. We weren't spouses. We were smart livestock for colonizing toxic worlds. Security footage from my final day changed everything. While I thought the princess was getting her ceremonial claws polished, she was actually inspecting a custom neural restraint collar. The engineers kept assuring her it would suppress human aggression without damaging cognitive functions. Delivery was scheduled for the wedding night. 2 things saved me from becoming groom number 12 in their gene bank. First, my combat implants accidentally scrambled their initial scans. They never got accurate readings on my adrenal thresholds. Second, and this still cracks me up, the princess personally vetoed standard sedation protocols in my case. She wanted authentic emotional bonding. The intercepted cloning orders explained something that haunted me. During my captivity, attendants would sometimes refer to me as the durable one. Now I know why. Of the 12 candidates, I showed highest cellular regeneration rates under radiation exposure, perfect for their dead world colonization plans. Military intelligence found something worse than the cloning vats. Deep in the palace sublevels, their scanners detected 11 cryopods with active biosigns. Not corpses, not clones. Living humans in suspended animation, still hooked to nutrient feeds. The princess had been cycling through specimens for years, keeping the best ones fresh between extraction sessions. My escape triggered automated protocols no one expected. When palace security systems registered an asset loss, they immediately dispatched collection teams to Earth's outer colonies. We only noticed because 3 freighters changed course toward Proxima Centauri within hours of my debriefing. The Agricultural Ministry claims it's a coincidence. Suddenly, my little escape became a diplomatic incident. Turns out, ruining an alien princess's wedding makes you famous. 6 months after my escape, I couldn't walk through a spaceport without someone recognizing me. The Zolician Empire wasn't happy about the interstellar incident, but they couldn't stop the news feeds. Security footage of me floating away in that flower barge went viral across 12 systems. Humans thought it was hilarious. The Zolaxians, less so. Their government sent 3 formal complaints to Earth's diplomatic corps, demanded compensation for stolen property. Apparently, the wedding decorations counted as military assets once I weaponized them. Meanwhile, their military academies started studying my escape methods, got hold of some training manuals. They translated my improvised tools into diagrams labeled human survival adaptations. The vibro blade lockpick trick was now required reading for their security forces. My debriefing sessions turned into strategy meetings. Command pulled me out of active duty and stuck me in a room with xenocultural analysts. We spent weeks dissecting every interaction with the princess. Turns out my fake love poems contained more intel than surveillance satellites. The way she tilted her head during certain questions revealed Zolician tells. How she reacted to my fake aggression taught us about their predator-prey instincts. The brass made my escape tactics standard training. Those Cadmus-class survival courses, they added a whole module on repurposing ceremonial items now. Trainees practice with replica Zolician jewelry and banquetware. Last month, some recruits used decorative wall hangings to rappel down a training tower. Instructors weren't even mad. Princess KLA Vex didn't take rejection well. Intelligence reports showed 6 new abduction attempts within a year, all targeting human military personnel. All failures. She tried snagging a Marine during a diplomatic reception on New Geneva. He headbutted her chief attendant and stole a dessert trolley as a getaway vehicle. Classic human move. The Zolician High Council demoted her for emotional compromises. Leaked documents showed she deviated from standard specimen collection protocols with me. Skipped the neural conditioning. Canceled the pre-wedding biological scans. Even dismissed half her security team because their armor ruined the aesthetic. Her replacement followed procedures exactly and got pepper sprayed by a Navy linguist during attempt number 4. Command created a new position for me. Alien Cultural Vulnerability Specialist. I help identify weak points in other species' security. Turns out most advanced civilizations share the Zolaxians' blind spot. They underestimate human creativity. The Vulpecura never considered someone might use beverage dispensers as pneumatic pumps. The Rillians didn't think to guard their ornamental garden tools. Those 11 other grooms stayed on my mind. We located 3 cryopods through back-channel deals, but the others? Let's just say the Zolaxians consider genetic material sovereign property. There's a task force working on it. Quietly. Meanwhile, every recovered file reveals new details about their program. Found out they classified us by stress response types. I was pattern delta, resourceful under prolonged duress. The princess still tries contacting me. Not through official channels. Random messages show up in unexpected places. Last month, a trade envoy delivered a handcrafted invitation to my niece's 10th birthday party. The wax seal matched Zolician royal stationery. Inside, someone had written rehearsal dinner rescheduled in perfect English. Left it on the gift table next to the cake. She's adapting, though. Recent abduction attempts show new tactics. One commando reported being served Earth-style coffee during capture, complete with lactose-free creamer matching his dietary profile. Another found his quarters decorated with holos of his hometown. They're learning. We're learning faster. My favorite development? Human-run escape rooms are booming across the Orion Spur. Civilians pay good money to get abducted by actors playing Zolician guards. The most popular scenario involves repurposing wedding decorations. Participants get scored on creativity. Last I checked, the record involved dismantling a chocolate fountain into a functioning zip line. The princess's latest move was unexpected. 2 weeks ago, an unmarked freighter delivered 12 potted plants to Command HQ. Genetic analysis showed human Zolaxian hybrid DNA. Not clones, actual flowering plants, with our genetic markers spliced into their cells. Mine grew thorns within 3 days of exposure to sunlight. The attached note read, "Till death do us part." Military scientists are studying the specimens. The xenobotanists think she's trying to communicate through plant hormones. I just know those things give security the creeps. They keep the pots in a high-security greenhouse now. One of the gardeners swears my plant leans toward the exit whenever he walks by. The funny thing, she still sends wedding invitations. My little adventure changed how 17 species view humanity. Galactic news feeds that used to label humans as fragile deathworlders now warn about high adaptability risk factors. Last month, the Rillian Trade Assembly issued new guidelines for interspecies marriages. Humans require special vetting because we're unpredictable decorators. Security footage of my escape went viral across 9 spiral arms. The Zolaxians tried suppressing it, but black market traders got hold of the flower barge launch sequence. Now it's a meme. Volpacuran street vendors sell holograms of that moment captioned, "When she says get milk." The most popular version shows the princess screaming as I float away with cake inside a heart-shaped explosion. Human-run businesses capitalized fast. Escape rooms themed around abducted grooms popped up on every colony world. For 50 credits, civilians get locked in replica Zolician banquet halls with nothing but ceremonial items. The record stands at 14 minutes, held by a schoolteacher who used chair upholstery to weave a grappling hook. Tourism to actual Earth wedding venues doubled after someone noticed archaic knives resemble lockpicks. Military analysts found something surprising in leaked documents. The Zolaxians weren't the only ones taking notes. 17 empires quietly reclassified human creativity as a Tier 3 strategic threat. The Volpacura even added a new defense protocol called Harker Scenario for dealing with improvised weapons. Their security forces now scan for cake ingredients near sensitive areas. Then the marriage offers started pouring in. Not abduction attempts, actual diplomatic proposals. The Xanthian hegemony sent an ambassador with a formal courtship offer from their prince. His terms included full human rights, visitation schedules, and a prenuptial clause guaranteeing no biological sampling. Turns out some species find our escape artist reputation appealing. The prince apparently collects mate challenges the way humans collect trading cards. Princess Kla Vex accidentally boosted our status. Her leaked research praised human adaptability in terms that made other empires nervous. One line went viral. Subject demonstrates problem-solving skills comparable to 10 trained Zolician engineers working under duress. Colonial recruitment centers saw a 300% spike in applications the week that quote surfaced. The funny part is why she picked me specifically. Of all 12 grooms, my file showed an anomaly, unusually high dopamine responses during crisis scenarios. Their scientists thought it indicated submission traits. Turns out human brains flood with neurotransmitters when figuring out escape routes. The more hopeless the situation, the harder my reward centers fired. Essentially, they chose me because I enjoyed outsmarting them too much. Our own military adjusted faster than expected. The Martian Marine Corps now includes decoration modification in basic training. Cadets practice repurposing banquet items during war games. Last month, one team turned a holographic centerpiece into a working comms array. The instructor's evaluation read, "Excellent field work. Needs better cake distribution." Civilian markets followed suit. Home security companies advertised Zolaxian proof, locks that resist jewelry-based picking attempts. Jewelry stores sell anti-abduction, rings with hidden compartments. One enterprising baker made a fortune selling emergency cake that doubles as metal cleaner. The reviews say it tastes terrible, but works great on door hinges. The princess's latest research leak revealed an unexpected twist. She'd noted how human humor correlated with escape success rates. Apparently, candidates who made jokes during testing lasted 40% longer. Now cultural exchange programs across the spur include mandatory comedy classes for diplomats. The Volpacura ambassador told me they're struggling to understand why puns help with crisis resolution. What really cemented our new reputation was the incident on New Titan. A Zolician research vessel tried apprehending a human geologist until she dismantled their containment field using mineral samples and a hairpin. Security footage shows her casually eating a sandwich while rerouting power through crystalline structures. The arresting officer later reported feeling professionally embarrassed. Xenopsychologists published papers analyzing our reputation shift. One study suggested aliens now view humans like unpredictable weather, potentially dangerous, but useful if harnessed correctly. The most requested human export isn't technology or resources anymore. It's training seminars on improvisational logistics. Even the princess adapted. Her latest abduction attempt involved a consensual dating profile on the interstellar equivalent of Tinder. The description promised no cloning, psychological evaluations optional. My intelligence contact says she's getting counseling from a Vulpicuran relationship coach. Progress, I guess. Military engineers reverse engineered something unexpected from my experience. The Zolician nano weave from my wedding cape makes fantastic armored underwear. Lighter than Kevlar, breathes better, and apparently annoys scanner tech across 6 known species. Production starts next month. The marketing team wants to call them Harker's Unmentionables. I'm filing a complaint. The real payoff came from the intercepted specs on alien security systems. Turns out my improvised tactics revealed flaws in their basic designs. Modern human-built prisons now include cake scanners and floral arrangement monitors as standard protocol. The warden of Series Maximum Security bragged his facility is 90% Harker-proof. Challenge accepted. So, anyone want to see what I kept as a souvenir? Turns out royal wedding rings make great lockpicks. The debriefing officer nearly choked on his coffee when I pulled it out during my final evaluation. That little band of alien metal caused more trouble than the entire Zolician invasion scare last year. The princess slid it onto my finger during our engagement ceremony. Their version of putting a tracking collar on a prized hunting dog. What she called a bonding artifact was actually a neural interface device wrapped in expensive plating. Felt like ice against my skin. I knew it was trouble when the attendants started whispering about compliance levels. Here's how it worked. Microscopic filaments in the ring's interior pierced my skin during wear. Not enough to hurt, just enough to monitor biochemical responses. The text later told me it released tailored compounds to stimulate attraction centers in the brain. Essentially chemical brainwashing disguised as romance. Human biology messed with their plans. Our neural pathways rewire too fast for their tech to keep up. The conditioning worked at first for about 6 hours. Then my dopamine receptors stopped responding to their carefully calibrated love potions. By day 3, the ring was just an expensive piece of jewelry spitting useless chemicals into my bloodstream. The attendants noticed something was wrong. Their scanners showed abnormal neurotransmitter levels, but not the patterns they expected. Instead of docile affection, the ring triggered problem-solving surges. Every time it tried to make me love the princess, my brain interpreted the chemical rush as a puzzle to solve. Their perfect compliance device turned into a constant reminder to escape. I kept wearing it anyway. 2 reasons. First, the princess would have suspected something if I took it off. Second, the central jewel made an excellent glass cutter when pried loose. That came in handy during the cake heist phase. Military intelligence nearly confiscated it post-escape. Their scans revealed something hilarious. The ring's tracking signal still worked. Better yet, the Zolaxians didn't know we'd cracked its encryption. For 3 glorious months, we fed them false coordinates. Their scouts kept showing up to empty warehouses rigged with embarrassing pranks. One team got doused in strawberry-scented foam. The real gold mine was in the ring's data core. Embedded files contained the princess's private research on human psychology. Turns out she'd studied every abduction attempt in detail. Her notes on groom number 5 showed particular fascination with how he'd used dental fillings to short-circuit a door panel. That research became required reading for deep space survival courses. Engineers are still reverse engineering the love suppression tech. Early tests show promise for trauma therapy. Turns out dialing down specific emotional responses helps PTSD patients. The irony isn't lost on me. A device meant to enslave now treats combat stress. Here's the funny part. The ring's molecular structure makes it the perfect lockpick. Zolician royal metal stays rigid at room temperature, but flexes slightly when heated to human body heat. Slides right into most electronic locks without tripping sensors. Our R&D department made prototypes based on the design. Next-gen spies will wear them as standard issue. The princess definitely knows I kept it. Last month, a Zolician courier delivered a small velvet box to Command HQ. Inside was a single note. Matching set available upon return. Our xenolinguists confirmed the handwriting matches hers. Security put the box through 17 scans before deciding it wasn't explosive. Medical keeps asking to study my finger where the filaments penetrated. There's faint scar tissue and spiral patterns, apparently a side effect of prolonged exposure to their neural tech. The docs say it might explain why standard interrogation drugs have no effect on me anymore. Silver linings and all that. Black market dealers offer insane sums for Zolician royal jewelry. When word leaked about my ring, offers hit 7 figures within hours. Command said no, obviously. Though they did let me loan it to the engineering corps for analysis. Those guys treated it like the Holy Grail for 3 straight months. The tracking signal finally died last week. Not because the tech failed, because the princess's family disowned her. Turns out royal rings get remotely deactivated when someone falls from grace. Intel suggests she's been demoted to some backwater research outpost. Part of me almost feels bad. Almost. I wear it sometimes during debriefings. Freaks out the new analysts when they realize what it is. The brass tolerates it because, well, it's become something of a mascot. There's talk of putting it in a museum once reverse engineering wraps up. I'm pushing for an interactive exhibit where visitors try picking old Earth locks with replicas. The debriefing officer had one final question after the ring inspection. It wasn't about tactics or alien tech or even the ethics of keeping classified artifacts as souvenirs. He just leaned back, looked me dead in the eye, and asked what everyone's been wondering this whole time. Final question, Lieutenant, would you do it all again? They wanted to send me back as part of a special ops team. The offer came 6 months after debriefing ended, slipped into my daily briefing packet like it was just another mission roster. Command wasn't asking. They were testing the waters. The operation had a code name, Gilded Cage Redux. Objective: infiltrate the Zolician Royal Palace and extract the remaining human prisoners. Your preferred method, unspecified. Intelligence confirmed the princess had overhauled security. My old escape routes were museum pieces now. The ventilation shafts, filled with nanofilament nets key to human body heat. The service tunnels, lined with pressure plates sensitive to bipedal gates. Even the decorative fountains I'd used as landmarks now pump paralytic mist during lockdowns. Every trick I'd used became a lesson for their defense grids. I'd already seen the upgrades in my nightmares. Same marble halls, same floating gardens, but now with human countermeasures at every turn. Motion trackers tuned to our blink patterns. Door seals that activated when detecting human sweat compounds. Worst were the new Minders, genetically enhanced attendants with triple the olfactory receptors. My brain kept replaying the chase scenarios, each ending with a containment pod hissing shut. The mission packet contained unsettling details. 83% of my original escape paths were physically altered. The floral barge launch site now had automated stun turrets. The reactor corridor emitted pheromone-based disorientation pulses. Even the banquet hall's cake table featured anti-tamper locks. A grudging respect for human ingenuity. What made me consider it were the mission parameters. Non-lethal engagement only. Princess KLA Vex couldn't be harmed beyond temporary incapacitation. That restriction told me everything. This wasn't just a prisoner extraction. Earth's diplomats wanted deniability while sending a message. Get our people back, embarrass the Zolaxians again, but don't start an intersystem war. Standard high-risk, high-reward spec ops calculus. The princess's latest research logs changed everything. While Earth debated the mission, she'd pivoted her entire program. No more broad-spectrum human acquisitions. Her team now focused exclusively on one genetic profile, mine. Medical confirmed she'd started a hybrid cloning initiative using tissue samples taken during my captivity. The first viable embryo grew for 112 days before termination. Here's what Command didn't say outright. This wasn't just about rescuing prisoners anymore. The princess had crossed from scientific curiosity to obsession. Her notes referred to me as primary adaptation template with disturbing frequency. The last recovered transmission mentioned modifying Zolician reproductive biology to better accommodate human DNA strands. The clincher came during the final briefing. Intelligence had located 8 of the 11 missing grooms. Their life signs showed steady decline. Turns out prolonged cryostorage damages human cells, even with alien tech. The mission window was shrinking, but that wasn't the real urgency. Satellite imagery showed new construction near the palace's east wing. Blueprints matched high-yield cloning facilities. Would I go back? The tactical computers gave Gilded Cage Redux a 38% success probability, better than my original escape odds, but with higher stakes. Failure meant more than capture now. It meant becoming the cornerstone of some interplanetary eugenics program. Support teams had prepped new tools based on my past exploits. Cake icing replaced with ceramic reactive gels. Vibroblade lockpicks redesigned to bypass harmonic scanners. Even the wedding cape nanofibers got upgraded to resist electrical interference. All clever adaptations. All missing the core lesson from last time. The princess's fatal flaw wasn't underestimating human ingenuity. It was misunderstanding our motivation. Every security patch assumed I'd escaped for personal freedom. None accounted for what I'd do when sent back for others. Medical cleared me for duty last Tuesday. The psych eval noted unusual stress response patterns, but deemed them mission compatible. Turns out recurring nightmares about alien cloning tanks score well on Special Operations Resilience metrics. Final prep included reviewing the princess's security updates. Her crowning achievement? A human behavioral prediction AI trained on my escape footage. It simulates my decision trees with 91% accuracy. The system has one blind spot. It can't account for what I'll do when fighting for someone else. Command left the decision window open for 72 hours. Long enough to consider every angle. Long enough for the princess to send another wedding invitation through back channels. This one included retinal scans of the remaining prisoners and a single line. Bring your own ring. So, what would you do in my place? Turns out, the most dangerous thing in the galaxy isn't alien tech. It's a human with nothing left to lose. Lieutenant Harker's story proves our greatest weapon is adaptability. When you're trapped in a golden cage, every piece of jewelry becomes a tool. Every tradition a weakness to exploit. Stay vigilant, spacefarers. That wedding invitation might be a trap. The Zolaxians aren't the only ones watching now. Half the galaxy's learning what happens when you underestimate us. Next week, we investigate what happened to the other 11 grooms. Their files contain darker secrets than anyone expected. Some dead